Mike, that word complete has been used a little bit about this baseball team. We've had Todd Walker on, former LSU Tiger, one of your coworkers at ESPN, and he kind of labeled that as Dave's most complete team since 2018. I know you didn't really have time in the selection show to kind of detail that out and go over why, but you do here. So, Mike, why do you think Arkansas is complete as they've been, and especially heading into this postseason as any team in baseball?
Yeah, I think it's not just the team. It's just like from a program standpoint too. Like the first of all, the you guys know you live it, right? The offense has come under heavy criticism the last few years, and Arkansas has become known as this lopsided program where they pitch like a big league team, but the offense makes everybody anxious. And I just think in the beginning of the year when people were still having PTSD about that. Not that I get plenty of predictions wrong. Don't get me wrong there, but the almost Hall of Fame level in that regard. But I just the conversations I was having with people were you can't look at Arkansas's 2025 lineup and not feel like the personnel are different and upgraded. And that's no offense to past teams, but part of it is like Vahiva Aloy is a year older, right? Like your second year in the league should be way better than your first year in the league. And then Iredale, like every scout that saw him in the fall was blown away. And, I'm the sucker for the Australian players who have all thrived in college baseball. Helfrich went off to the Cape and went crazy. And, I was pretty skeptical of Davalon. I was wrong about that. So I think part one is the offense. And the offense is not, it can do a lot of different things. Like they can trade power punches with people. They can execute. I also think the pitching depth has really come into play. I think it's a better defensive team probably than they had last year. But I also think that the program just seems really settled right now. We all understand that they've lost in the postseason at home the last 3 years that they've been home. And the Omaha trip was a road show. But I think that's helpful. Like, I think programs get to a point where that stuff doesn't torment you anymore. You get right with it. You get peace with it. So I sense that for Arkansas. Now, this is going to be a very challenging trip to Omaha. I'm sure we'll get into that in a second. But all that said, I love where they sit. I think I'm very optimistic on the Hogs.
Mike Rooney with us here on the Lewis Automotive Group hotline. If I ask you, name me the 2, 3, 4 best top coaches in NCAA baseball, I think Dave Van Horn would come up on most people's list. Best programs in the SEC, Arkansas is going to be in that conversation. Why is it having a great program and having one of the best coaches in the game has not equaled a national championship yet for Dave Van Horn? What's your opinion on that?
I think just bad luck. I know no one wants to hear that, but it's like, it's not like there's a program out there that has won like 6 national titles. It's not like the 90s, where if this was happening to Dave Van Horn in Arkansas in the 90s, we would be saying, okay, why is Arkansas not as good in baseball as LSU, right? Like, you're chasing one program that has some schematic, structural, infrastructure type of things that are, that have caused it to separate from the rest of the sport. We've all talked through and lived through and therapied through the 2018 deal, but
some still are
one play, right. It's one play, and like sometimes you get lucky and sometimes you don't. Like, I think about Kevin O'Sullivan. Like the two active coaches that have been to the most super regionals or have won the most super regionals are Kevin O'Sullivan and Dave Van Horn, and it's unbelievable how many their winning percentage in super regionals is outrageous. Kevin O'Sullivan's got one title, right? Like it's the difference between one title and 0 titles. There's not like miles and miles of road there. And if you go back and look in Florida's national title, in game 2 when Sully decides to pitch Jackson Kowar in relief, like all chips in the middle of the table, and if they lose that game, he's got no starting pitching for game 3. Like, that could have gone differently, right? Yeah. So I just think, I do think, the one thing I do think, and this is not me pointing the finger at anybody, this is just something a program has to process. because they didn't win the title and time has gone on, I do think the players feel that pressure, and it takes the right group of players to come in and not deal with that. And I do think, like when I think of, that when I look at Brett Iredale and the way he carries himself, and I think about the Aloy brothers and the way they carry themselves, they do feel less, vulnerable to those types of pressures. I think about South Carolina guys, that 2010 to 2012 era. There was a lot of pressure around that program in that era. They were going through some things that are somewhat similar, and it took a Michael Roth and a Christian Walker, who were just really cool customers, to just kind of carry that team through the pressure, because it, like, their teammates looked at it like, hey, it doesn't bother them, so why should it bother me? So anyway, I think it's just there's a part of it. You have to be good to win a national title. You have to be healthy to win a national title. And it does require a couple, bounces going your way.
Yeah, it's almost like in golf where they say, Ricky Fowler, who's the best player in the world to never win a major. It's kind of like the same category for college baseball. Arkansas is the best program. Dave Van Horn's the best coach to never win the Natty. That's kind of what the same feel I get with it.
Agreed. And it was Phil Mickelson when many years ago. And next thing he's won a handful of them. And so I saw a stat recently that where I think Arkansas has been a top 8 national seed 6 of the last 7 years. And I think we don't, because we get so obsessed with the postseason, myself included, we don't take enough time to think back and say, holy heck, like Arkansas was one of the top 8 teams in the country out of 300 plus teams in 6 of the last 7 seasons. That is a remarkable run of consistent play. And, the postseason is a mini tournament. You've got to win 10 highly pressurized games in a very short span of time. A million things can go a million different ways. But the consistency of the Arkansas program is second to none.
Well, Mike, speaking of consistency, SEC has won, I think, every national title since 2019, no season in 2020. SEC or the field this year, given the choice?
I think you have to take the SEC until further notice, right? Like I would say that I'm interested to see it play out this year, because I do think leagues like the ACC, like the old rising tide lifts all boats. Like the ACC is not good with being the bridesmaid all the time in baseball, and those programs and those schools are working at it. The problem is, so is the SEC, right? Like you're sprinting, trying to catch someone else who is checks notes sprinting, right? It's like the SEC is not sitting there resting on their laurels. So I think the one thing that's interesting about the SEC this year is we don't have a super team that we know about. Now, maybe it is Arkansas, but I like Arkansas didn't have a regular season that was like as loud as Tennessee last year, or like the LSU team 2 years ago, where they're sitting there with Paul Skeens and Dylan Cruz on the same college team. Like it almost still feels, it doesn't even feel real. And then they weren't even the number one team. It was Wake Forest, and so I wouldn't even put this Arkansas's regular season as the same as the 2021 Arkansas regular season, where that was a super team. So I think that makes it interesting. I do think, as my good friend Chris Burke pointed out, it's interesting that of the 8 SEC hosts, 6 of them are all on the right side of the bracket. So, that does lend itself to maybe a little bit of a mix in the College World Series finals. Because that's the thing, guys, right now is we haven't, as it's currently constructed, we haven't even had a non-SEC team, forget winning the thing, we haven't had a non-SEC team in the CWS finals since Michigan in 2019. Like, the league has got the finals blockaded off for the rest of college baseball. So, until further notice, give me the SEC.
All right, so you mentioned Burke. I know you're with Kyle Peterson and one of your coworkers, Max Schick, this past Monday, of course, doing the selection show. Was the cookout afterwards? Was it before? Like, how'd you go about doing it on Memorial Day weekend when you're having to work, Mike?
Yeah, it's I think for all of us, it's like Christmas Day. I think, those guys were players. I was a player and a coach, and I can only speak for myself. Maybe that's the safer play. I've been on every part of the selection show. I've been player out, player in. I've been coach, young single coach, we missed. I've been young single coach, we're a host. I've been now married, and the pressure of your coaching career ramps up. It doesn't just affect you as a single guy and your beer money, right? It now affects you and your wife. My wife Jenny and I have sat through those things where, you're a host, you're not a host, you're a top 8, you're not a top 8, et cetera, et cetera. So I think we all appreciate the gravity of the day, but it's super fun. Those guys are awesome. We do celebrate afterwards, but we're all running to the airport too, right? Like after when I hang up with you guys, I'm running back to the airport so I can go to Bristol for Squeeze Play. So I think, I know I can speak for the group when I say we all feel super blessed to get to do this. It's, it's the funnest time of the year. It's the most fun, I suppose. And it's just a blast. It's an absolute blast.
You know where Mike's based out of, right, Tommy? Scottsdale. So I'm getting.
Well, technically Prescott, Arizona, but yes, we're Scottsdale adjacent.
I'm guessing no golf, no golf here in the next few weeks. We've had to table it for the time being.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and it is getting to the time of year out here where if you're playing golf, you're playing at 5:12 a.m.
Yeah.
It's a little toasty out here.
Yeah, the good deals are at noon.
Right.
When it's like 90-something degrees. Mike, we got about 30 seconds.
90's a cool way.
100-something. We'll let you go with this. I know there's been speculation what Dave Van Horn's going to do with the pitching rotation this weekend. We were kind of talking about before you came on. If you're him, do you pitch Root on Friday or do you leave him for Saturday?
I think they look at the matchups. I'm a believer there's no points for second place in regionals. Nobody cares if you won 0-2, 1-2, or 2-2. You win it or you don't win it. And so I always think that the coaches should have the courage to set your rotation with no fear of losing. Whatever you think gives you the best matchups to win the thing, do that and sell your team on it. Because, again, we've all finished second in regionals. Nobody cares. You win this thing or you do not win this thing.
Mike, good stuff this morning. Hopefully there's a good weekend ahead at the Fayetteville Regional. Might get to see you in Omaha here in a few weeks. Thanks for your time.
All right. Be good, guys. See ya.
That, again, is Mike Rooney, college baseball analyst. You can watch him on ESPN. You can read him on D1 Baseball as well.
BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. Baseball season is in full swing and we're into the NBA and NHL playoffs, and BetOnline has more ways to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting while the games are being played. With the largest selection of odds on everything from the MLB, NBA, NHL, and UFC, BetOnline remains the best online source for all your sports wagering information. In between games, head over to the BetOnline Casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and live casino. Bet online, the game starts here.